Cloud-first development helps your business move fast, but misconfigurations and blind spots are part of the deal. App and dev teams get the flexibility, while security teams are left with the stress of managing new risk using legacy workflows. ExtraHop Reveal X provides cloud-native network detection and response, backed by cloud-scale machine learning that helps you spot threats and unify processes across hybrid environments. Learn more at extrahop.com/securityweekly. That's extrahop.com/securityweekly. Keep your company and products relevant, competitive, and reliable by standardizing your security framework to protect intellectual property, become a reliable business partner, and guard financial and customer information. Standards Connect is an online standards management solution from ANSI. It's standards access simplified. Standards Connect is a cost-saving, fully customizable solution for entrepreneurs and companies that spend $2,000 or more per year on standards and want to translate spend into a subscription model, want to simplify access, search, monitoring, and collaboration, or need a centralized hub of standards for multiple users at one or more locations. Get a free trial at securityweekly.com/ANSI. That's /ANSI.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque. We have exciting news about the Security Weekly webcast program. We are now partnered with ISC Squared as an official CPE provider. If you attend any of our webcasts, you will receive 1 CPE credit per webcast. Register for one of our upcoming webcasts with Preempt, ServiceNow, or Core Security, or all of them, by going to securityweekly.com. Click the webcast drop-down and select registration. Yes, it's that easy now. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find them in our on-demand library by selecting On Demand from the webcast drop-down on the main menu. We also have some exciting news about our programming. Starting this quarter, Security Weekly is starting a new podcast called Security and Compliance Weekly, which will focus on the integration of security and compliance. Jeff Mann will be hosting this new show. Also in Q4, we're going to restart Tradecraft Security Weekly. Tyler Robinson will be bringing us new tips and techniques for penetration testing. Look for both of those 2 new shows starting later this month here in October. All right, let's get to our research results. So I am going to share out a presentation for everyone, and we can get started on that front. Oh, as long as I push the right button. It's always fun. All right, go to presentation mode. Let's share the screen, and hopefully we have success. All right. So let's, so what is this about? Earlier this year, we sent out a survey about the Security Weekly 25 Index. And what I really wanted to understand is who was using the different technologies, products in the Security Weekly 25 Index, and who was looking at them, just to get an idea of what was going on, Jason, right? And so we had 272 respondents to the survey.
Outstanding.
Yeah, which it wasn't bad. I mean, it was a first-time test of doing this type of survey.
Yeah, no, that's good to go that we had that level of participation. I like that.
Right. And so what I really wanted to measure was 3 areas. So when we look at the agenda, I wanted to look at if you weren't a customer of one of these products, one, were you even considering them?
Yeah.
So there's some interesting results in here. The second thing I wanted to know was, are you demoing, trialing, or purchasing one of these products?
Yep, which is important, right? Number one, did they meet the sniff test to get in the door and actually have you take a look at it? And then, were you willing to actually put it in a demo environment and bake it off against other products?
Exactly. The second bucket I want to look at is if you were an existing customer of one of these products. And the 2 main things I wanted out of it is, were you expanding your relationship with that vendor, which means you like what they were doing and you were going to buy more?
Yeah. Yep. Retention's a huge indicator, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
it is.
How many people are renewing their contracts versus the next bullet here, terminating contracts, right? How many are jumping off the ship?
Exactly right. So if you're an existing customer and you're terminating, who are you terminating, right? Again, leading indicators of potential future, which is what I was trying to understand. And when we get into some of these results, based on what we just talked about in the last segment, we had some early indicators, which is kind of interesting in this research. Then the other bucket was if you're a former customer, why did you leave? Was it lack of features, support issues, and or price?
Yeah, that feedback as to why those organizations feel like those products and or services were not adding value to their organization. So very, very good information on the back end as to why folks don't feel like these products belong, and why they're not adding value to the overall business and security posture.
Exactly right. So let's dig into a couple of these. So the first one is, if you weren't a customer, were you interested or not interested in considering them? And so in this measurement, the top 3 responses were the worst. Like, these are the 3 solutions I'm not looking at.
Yeah.
And look at those 3 names.
I know.
Werent, Carbonite, and Radware. And you and I just had the conversation about Werent and Radware
exactly
on the last segment. I don't see them anywhere.
Right.
And it doesn't look like many other people are looking at them either. And then we saw a huge drop-off, Carbonite, right? I talked about Carbonite's market value going from right around $1 billion to under $500 million, even after the Webroot acquisition.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like anybody's evaluating
nobody's
their
looking
solution.
At them. No, right? And that, coupled with what we talked about earlier about the class action lawsuits and lack of organic growth and issues with sales execution, that's probably playing a role in that as well.
Exactly. So some leading indicators, maybe.
Yeah.
Now, on the bottom side, which means these were the best companies that people were going to look at. So Tenable Holdings, my former company, Splunk, and Carbon Black.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I look at this list and I'm like, all right, we're a partner of Tenable, right? We actually use the product very heavily. Splunk, we don't in my organization, and Carbon Black, we have it in a demo environment right now where we're baking off against other products.
And what's interesting is we see great results from Splunk the last couple quarters.
Yep.
We see the acquisition of Carbon Black by VMware.
Yeah.
Again, potentially some leading indicators just from this simple question.
Yep. No, it's great data.
All right, so let's dig into the next one. Who's doing demos, trials, or purchasing solutions? Again, you see Carbon Black and Splunk at the top of this list.
Case in point.
Yep, which is case in point, right? They're the most considered, and they're also the highest in a demo, trial, purchase work stream for customers. So a lot of correlation there.
Sure.
Number 3 actually was CyberArk, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. More people moving into the the password management side of the house, the password vaulting side. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I see a lot of our organizations that are customers of ours, looking to credential management and privileged access management as some things that they want to be doing in the future.
Exactly. Now, on the bottom side, this is when VeriSign was still in the index. This was before they sold off their security products. And maybe this is why they sold it off, is because they weren't in demos, trials, or purchases of their security products.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Akamai here surprised me a little bit. Yeah. And F5 has gone through some interesting transitions as well, but not as much on the demo, trial, purchase side of those 3 companies.
Yeah, I mean, with F5, I've heard some inklings of, ease of use type issues and support issues and things of that nature. So it makes sense. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, those might come up later. Hold that thought. I can't remember off the top of my head. All right. So if you're an existing customer, are you expanding? So here's what's interesting. Not a lot of demo, trial, or purchases for not a customer, but F5 customers are expanding their use of F5, which I thought was really interesting and almost counterintuitive to the previous slide.
Yeah, I guess when they have a foothold within the organization, they're doing a good job of getting deeper and wider within the organization.
Yep. Tenable and Splunk, both high on their expansion side. Again, you also saw them high on the consideration side, and you've seen Splunk consistently performing pretty well up through these first 3 questions. Who's the worst in expansion? Carbonite. Previous discussions all included. But here's where I see NetScout and Varonis really falling off on an expansion
Yeah, so
side.
this tells me a lot right here, right? The Varonis side. We were talking about it earlier about how it surprised me that unstructured data wasn't really making a big push, and maybe this is the reason why Varonis really isn't pushing forward in that space. They're having issues. There's got to be some issues with either the execution of the implementation or when it's within the system, within an organization, because they're not expanding. They're not getting deeper and wider like you see F5 or Tenable will be doing.
Yep, exactly right. Yeah, it's just interesting when we see where they're kind of stagnant, and then you look at the results of the survey, you start to see where these are correlating.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, who's terminating? I found this one fascinating, actually, for a couple reasons. So number one, the highest termination rate was actually for Checkpoint.
Yeah. That one doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you. I mean, I look at it as a lack of innovation. There's some bigger players out there in the market that have been kind of chewing up, at least from what I see from a client perspective, chewing up Checkpoint, and really taking over their footprint out there.
Exactly. And you'll see that on the other side when we talk Palo Alto in a second.
Exactly.
But the other two, Symantec, which we were seeing decline in the endpoint space, right? We put a lot of pressure on Symantec prior to the acquisition. And VeriSign, because, again, VeriSign was shedding, I think, a lot of their security customers, which is why they ultimately sold their security portfolio over to the, who was that? I'm drawing a blank on the name. I'll figure it out. It'll come to me again. Then on the lowest side, right, the bottom three who are terminating the lease, Palo Alto Networks, replacing a lot of the Checkpoint. F5 Networks, not a lot of termination. So again, if you look at F5 through a couple of these questions, they're not in a lot of new deals.
Right.
They're getting expansion, and they're not getting a lot of termination.
Right.
So that's why they've continued to stay, I think, steady state.
Yep.
But the question is, what's the future growth of an F5 Networks when you're not acquiring new logos? Because then your expansion and your low turnover rates aren't actually helping.
Right. Yeah, if you're not getting new business, it's going to affect you in the long run, right? I mean, I can get it. You can only go deeper and wider so much within your client base before you have to start adding new logos.
Exactly. And then the last one on this list was Mimecast, which I thought was interesting. On the email side.
Security,
yeah. All right. So if you're a former customer, why did you leave? Lack of features. Here's our Symantec, which is why I think the entire EDR market exists, is because Symantec, who probably pretty much owned the majority of the endpoint space, never innovated enough.
Right.
And therefore, they allowed lots of entrants like the Silences and the CrowdStrikes and the Carbon Blacks to come in and really come after them. And look, former customers saying, look, you don't have the feature set that I want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Symantec alumni from back in the day, and even back then we had concerns as engineers that they weren't innovating as fast as they needed to. So, we're talking 15 years later, and we're still singing that same song.
Exactly. We got VeriSign in this list again. The one that surprised me actually was Tenable.
Yeah.
Having worked for Tenable, and I think what this boils down to is Tenable.io. Security Center and the Security Center feature set, I think, is super rich. And I think maybe where some of these results were coming from is the immaturity of Tenable.io compared to Security Center, and maybe some frustration there as they're trying to go after, somebody like a Qualys who has a ton of features in the cloud.
Yeah. I think another piece too, and this is just from being, a client of Tenable, is opening it up deeper to that MSSP space, right? Because if we could, as an organization, a technology services and managed services company, if we could, take Tenable.io, make it into a better multi-tenant environment where we could actually start, leveraging our buying power and sharing some of those services with our clients and putting it out there, I think we'd be in a really good spot, right? Because it'd allow us to actually help as a client and a partner to get this technology out to our client base as well. So that's one thing that I've been talking to Tenable a lot about is, how can we create this multi-tenant environment so our clients can reap the benefit of our Tenable IO instance, right, and start jumping on board.
So let me just tell you, I wrote that strategy. I rolled out that product. We did sign one MSSP before that contract was canceled. But the whole premise of allowing Tenable and Tenable.io to go after the MSPs in a multi-tenant space, I did a lot of that work when I was there. There just hasn't been buy-in at the executive level to really embrace the MSSP channel. And part of it is they think they compete with the MSSP market, and I don't see that at all.
No, I know. I mean, look at Rapid7 and what they're doing, right? They're embracing the MSSP model, and they're killing it. So I think if they took that same strategy, I know just from hearing from our clients, right? They go out there and they look at the platform. They're saying, I don't know if I can really afford it. But if I could jump on with you, we'd totally go down that path. And the concern from a CISO's perspective is it's not truly multi-tenant right now, right? We deal with a lot of organizations that have regulatory and compliance needs, and we're dealing with law enforcement and DoD, and that's table stakes for us to be able to do that kind of business.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, part of my old strategy days resurfacing their ugly head. Okay. On the bottom side of the list, right, where it wasn't a lack of feature, Checkpoint wasn't losing due to lack of features. Splunk's not losing because of lack of features, and F5 Networks isn't losing because of lack of features.
Yeah. So let's see why.
Yeah, let's see why. All right. So let's look at support issues. The top three which are worse, Symantec from a support perspective. Checkpoint. Now you add Checkpoint into the mix.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting, right? It wasn't lack of features. It was more on the support side.
Supportability,
causing issues. And then Rapid7 showed up in the top 3 for support issues.
Yeah, that's an interesting one right there. I'm surprised at that one.
I was too. I knew it wasn't going to be on price because when you look at the way Rapid7 is traditionally priced, they were never going to lose on price. But support issues actually kind of surprised me.
Yeah, definitely.
On the bottom side, F5 Networks, not support issues. FireEye and Proofpoint must have great support teams, which is good. So they're on the low side from this perspective.
Yeah, that F5, I mean, they can get deep and wide into their customer base. It looks like they have good support, but they're having issues getting new logos.
Yep. And when you look at price, Checkpoint, Splunk, and F5 show up at the top.
So there you go too. Price.
Yep. We knew Splunk was definitely a price concern as you continue to grow your logs. But now what you're seeing is some of that turnover for F5 and Checkpoint are related more to price than they are some of the other buckets. Which
and
I
now
thought
you
was
combine it with some of those other issues we just talked about, and there you go. Now you have the visibility as to why.
Yeah, and then on the pricing side, Rapid7 and Tenable aren't going to lose on price.
Yep. Right.
And it doesn't look like Fortinet is either.
Which is great. Yeah, no, I mean, Fortinet kills it on the price side. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, they have good product, and it's reasonably priced. So I can see why they would hit this side of the list.
Yeah, and it was, Fortinet hasn't shown up anywhere else.
I know.
In these survey results, right? They're kind of right in the middle of the pack everywhere else. Yep. There's nothing crazy. But they show up here as being one of the lowest from a price turnover perspective anyways.
Hey, good on them. Good on them.
Yeah. So that's my little list for our survey results. I do owe the slide deck to a few folks that requested it as part of the research results, so I will make sure I get that out. Yeah. And now we have a nice little segment summarizing all of our research.
No, I love it. I can't wait to see the trends coming up in the next, and it'll be nice, every time we do this to kind of trend every one of these segments out too, and the results out, and kind of see how that trends over time. So it'll be nice to look at this next year to see how everything trended out.
Exactly. So what I'm hoping for is that we can do this again early next year with the updated Security Weekly 25 index, and then we'll have a comparison point. And look, some new vendors, right? We'll get the CrowdStrikes in, we'll get the Pings and some of these other companies that have come into the index that are now public, and see how they start to trend along with everybody else.
I'm sure we'll see a lot more consolidation and things of that nature happening as well.
Yes, let's hope so. Jason, thank you for joining me on this wonderful holiday.
Absolutely. Anytime. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.